feeling. And most of you I know are here because you remember the trial. And I would say Hal Hardin is a man that hardly needs an introduction. He's had a distinguished legal career, and he started out because one of the names we all know of Tom Schreiber brought him here to be a part of the trial of the century. And he's going to tell you all about that. I don't think he needs an introduction. Hal Hardin.
Well, this is like old home week to me. I see a lot of characters out there that I know. I mean, Paul Sloan and the Woods here. I mean, you wouldn't believe it, but Woods and I hitchhiked across the United States, I think 3 times. And we canned peas in Walla Walla, Washington, and then we'd go to combining and combine out there. We did it for 3 years. It was pretty good pay, you know, but nobody believes that anymore, that we just hitch.
Almost as good pay as lawyers.
Yeah, I mean, and Keel Hunt here, who's one of the best writers, I think, in the South, if not the United States. And if you don't get his Keel notes, you ought to. And he wrote a great book about the Blanton administration. And there's so many of you here. And Kim Hinton over here, he's a new author. He just wrote a murder mystery, but it's a real life one. It's about one of his high school friends. And you ought to read that one. And there's so many of you, and I'm just honored to be here. Although I get this flyer that says, come here, Hal Hardin, the last man standing, the only one left alive. And I thought, you know, the only one, and I saw this little book that just came out, it's about a year ago, and it says, I don't know if I picked it up, but anyway, I'll tell you what it is. It's called the Trial of the Century, and I didn't know it was being written, and Jim Cameron wrote it. And in the first part of it, he said, this was the greatest trial of the century. He said, there were such legend lawyers. They were just incredible lawyers, and they were powerhouses and all this, you know, on and on and on. And by my count, there's only one left standing. And I dedicate this book to him. And I'm a speed reader, and a lot of times I don't pay close attention. So I got about page 5, and I said, wait a minute, the last man standing, that's me, you know. And I guess that's a good thing, because now I can tell the stories and nobody can refute them. Well, let me tell you how I became involved in this case. When I was a student at Vanderbilt, and we all worked our way through Vanderbilt. We didn't have anybody else paying our freight, and I worked for the district attorney's office, Tom Schreiber, and it was very strange. I was not an assistant DA when I was in law school, but Frank Woods, your brother, and I were dorm advisors. Actually, he got me into Hemingway Hall, and we were great dorm advisors, I'll just tell you that. They loved us. But anyway, Frank was one of the great lawyers here in town, and just such a good guy. But the Schreiber asked me to come and be an assistant in his office, not an assistant DA, because I was still in law school. So I became an assistant, and he said, I want you, as one of your duties, to be an investigator. I said, well, okay. And he says, also, we have this homicide squad, or suicide squad, that we want you and a couple other law students to be on. And I said, well, what is that? He said, well, the police are out here, they're shooting these people that are mentally ill. And I want all you guys to go out there and talk these people down and get them in the asylum. I said, you want us all to go out there? And, you know, I thought, we did it too. And I thought, well, you know, I don't know where the insane people are, on this side of the door or on that side of the door. But none of us ever got hurt. And one of the duties was to answer calls of homicide and so forth. And pursuant to that, I'm a Vanderbilt law student. I have my own car, undercover. It's got a big antenna on the back of it, got a radio on it, it's got a siren. And I'll tell you, it's really fun. You have a date on Sunday afternoon, you go out in the country and turn on the lights, the siren. I mean, great days. It was. But anyway, but when I left, graduated from Vanderbilt, I graduated a little late because I went to UT, and they were on the quarter system, and we were on the semester system. So I had to go to summer school, so I could not graduate with my class. I had to wait 6 months to take the bar. And so what I did was, your brother said, Hal, I want you to go to St. Louis, and you be the acting director of the St. Louis Job Corps Center for Women, which was 500 young, beautiful girls, just 2 or 3 years younger than me at the time. And it was a college that they were in on campus. So I was working there, and again, he appointed me as the acting director. After 2 weeks, he fired the director and put me in as the director of all of it. And this is incredible. What do I know about this? But anyway, I got a call in a few months from Tom Shriver, the district attorney. And he said, look, I want you to come on home. And I said, well, I got a pretty good job up here. I got a steady paycheck, and, I'm the director, and it's kind of nice and all that. But I do want to be a lawyer. He said, well, I really want you to come. And I said, well, I'll come under one condition. You'll let me be in the Powell trial. And the reason I wanted to be in the Powell trial was because when I was an investigator, I was one of the first investigators to go out and see the body. It was out at General Hospital. It was the first time I'd ever seen anybody all shot up. And I asked the policemen that were there, I said, what happened here? He said, well, this is the president of a Chevrolet dealership here, and the vice president said he was out driving with him, and I'll just give you the quote, and he said that this nigger jumped in the back seat and shot him. And of course, that was the excuse since a lot of white boys used, to blame it on African Americans. But immediately I sensed that this is not correct. This is obviously a homicide, and I think I know who did it. So, so I had an interest in the case, and I told Tom Shriver, I'll come back if you will make me the third man at the council table. And he said, you got it. And I'd always been an admirer of John Hooker Sr. When his son ran for governor, I was his personal aide, and got to know him and got to know all the Hookers. But I know you guys are going to hold that against me, right? But anyway, I moved downtown, and I lived at the Capitol Towers. I just want to set the scene for you. Nashville has never been more divided in any case than this one right here. You either thought that Powell did it, or he was totally innocent. But the amazing thing to me was I would walk to the courthouse. I lived about 2 blocks away in Capitol Towers. I'd walk to the courthouse, and 5 and 6 o'clock in the morning, there's people outside the courthouse trying to get in because it was a small courtroom. There were newsmen all over the place. Never in the history of the United States has there been daily copies run on the front page of every word that was spoken in court. Court reporters would come in and type about what was said, and then they'd grab the papers and run. And somebody else would come in and take their place. The front page of every newspaper, and we had 3 at that time, had it word for word as to exactly what was going on. And we had, it was the Nashville Tennessean, the early edition of the Banner, and the late edition. And you had young boys on street corners saying, read all about it, read all about it, witness in the Powell case says this and says that, you know. It was packed outside the courtroom. The judge would not let the cameras into the courtroom. And so they had artists in there sketching pictures and everything. And if you're ever interested in seeing them, I grabbed every one of them when I left. You know, so I want to keep these. They're really, really great photos. I mean, paintings. So the case was tried before we had what we call the new rules of evidence and procedures. There were a lot of procedures that should have been in place for the legal profession side that were not. And I think that hampered, and I think it helped the defense. Larry Woods is going to ask me who I think was the best lawyer there, Jack Norman or John Hooker. I'll just say this: they were both, and I had the pleasure during my career to try cases with both of them and against them sometimes. But these were unusual men. They had this charisma about them, this karma that it was just incredible. And when they would say something, you really didn't want to debate them. You wanted to tell them, okay, I'll do it. Let me give you an example. During the middle of this trial, the defense calls this witness, and he's an expert on gunpowder. And he's saying, he came in and said, Powell couldn't have done it because I've examined his coat, which he had dry cleaned in the hospital, but and found all this powder, so he could not have fired the gun like they say. And it was, you know, it's just preposterous. And we, under those rules, we didn't know he was coming, or we'd had our own expert. Anyway, it's 4:30 in the afternoon, and Mr. Hooker said, you know, we need to go to Hooker Hill Farms. Let's all go out and have a drink and kick this over, figure out what we're going to do. So we went out there, me, the DA, or the other lawyers, and the investigators, and we just commiserated. How in the hell did this happen? I mean, this is going to kill us, you know. And finally, about 9 o'clock at night, Mr. Hooker says, I'll call J. Edgar Hoover. Well, that's great. You know, the head of the FBI, one of the most powerful men in the world, actually, he gets Hooker, the director on the phone and says, I need this help. I need really some help. He said, I'll get some agents to get in touch with you right now. So he got agents, and they started giving us, you know, ideas on what we can do. And they said, oh, the guy's a fraud. There ain't no question about it. You know, that's our known reputation about him in the FBI. And so then everybody leaves, and it's me and Mr. Hooker. It's about 11 o'clock at night. And Mr. Hooker says, Hal, I want you to go find a witness. I said, okay. And he said, well, where do you want me to go? He said, go Madison, Wisconsin. That's where this guy was from. And you got to get him back here tomorrow. And you know, you just don't question Mr. Hooker. I mean, I went to the restroom, and I came back, and I said, well, how am I going to get to Madison, Wisconsin, and back between now and 9 o'clock in the morning? And it looked like he's kind of mystified. Well, I never thought about that, you know. So I stepped outside. I smoked cigarettes that time. I smoked a cigarette. I came back, and he said, I got a jet airplane out at Bear Hill warming up for you to go to Madison, Wisconsin. And Mrs. Hooker knew that I didn't like to fly in turbulent weather. So she slipped a bottle of scotch in my pocket and said, you know, go get them. So here I am. I go sailing into the night to Madison, Wisconsin. Never been there before. I arrive at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Well, what the hell do I do now? You know, here I am. And I've been up since 5. I was unshaven, you know, smelled like that scotch. So I said, well, I'll go to the sheriff's office. So I went to the sheriff's office, and I thought they were going to kick me out because it looked like a homeless guy was in there, you know, wrinkled. And I said, I'd like to talk to the sheriff. And I explained who I was and so forth, and they finally gave in. The sheriff came in about 6, I guess, and he said, "Oh, the guy's a fraud. Ain't no question. He's a fraud. We don't use him, and we found out he's a fraud," and gave me all kind of examples. And I said, "Well, great. You need to come down to Nashville. You're a law enforcement man. We need your help. This could save the case. It's a big case." And he leaned back and said, "How am I going to get to Nashville, Tennessee this morning?" And I very smugly, in my best hooker voice, said, "I got a jet airplane warming up on the runway for you." And that fool came with me. And we get out there to the runway, and I'm feeling pretty good right now. You know, I'm bringing home the bacon, and it's the trial of the century. And we get out there, and we get in the airplane, and the pilot turns on the motor, and the battery's dead. kind of took back a lot of things. But anyway, we got here, and I remember I walked in, and again, God, that's what. So I'd been up over 24 hours. I walk in, and the district attorney's investigator said, "Hal, I think you ought to go to home for a while, take a shower." So we did, and but that's just an example of what these men thought. I mean, you just kind of, you went along with it. Maybe I wouldn't now, but in those days, we looked at people like that and honored them somehow. They were such powerful, charismatic people. And when I left the DA's office, I wanted to go into a firm that had great criminal lawyers in it. And I thought, well, why not try Mr. Norman's office? So I did, and I got to try several cases with him. And he was the same way. I mean, he'd get me to prepare a case, and I thought it was his case. I'm just doing it for him. And we get over there, and he said, "You take the opening statement. You get to the jury. You do this." He never said a word until I put I put the client on, but I thought he would. And we were looking for this guy in North Nashville that looked just like him. That was our defense. And later on, we found him after the trial, and he was not guilty. And so in my frustration, I say, "James, will you tell the jury where you and I were until 4 o'clock this morning?" And out of the corner of my eye, I see Mr. Norman rising up and says, "I object." And the judge looked up and said, "Well, you can't object. This is your lawyer. I mean, you can't do that." "I do, Your Honor. He's my client, and I'm telling him not to say a word. And it's the Fifth Amendment, because anybody that had been out with Hal Hardin until 4 o'clock in the morning is bound to incriminate themselves." I swear. I mean, you'd be put in jail if you tried something like that. He sat down. The jury laughed like this. Everybody in the courtroom laughed. Judge Cornelius didn't know what to do. And finally said, let's just move on. But they did things. They thought big. They ran around with the most powerful people in the world. They could call the President of the United States or the Supreme Court justice. They were just an amazing group of people. But back to this story, the last ride. One of the things that really shocked me in the book that she wrote, and I didn't know this story, is about the victim in this case, Mr. Gurley, his early childhood. It's the most astounding story. I could not believe what I was reading. That when he was 8 years old, his parents, it's interesting, their parents, one was very poor and one was rich. And they went to the World's Fair in St. Louis. And they'd be coming back on the train, and they put the kids up in one car, and they were in the back. And they get to Nashville, and no parents. They totally disappeared and left 2 children under 8 years old, under 10 years old. And for him to rise from that to such high society, I mean, he knew people in England and France and in the White House. He was a powerful man. But that was, to me, is the darndest story. I mean, I just can't believe that that happened, that any parent would do that. I know, it's just astounding. But after the trial, the day the trial ended, I thought we still had a chance, but our case was wounded. And I remember they said the jury's ready to give its verdict, and I remember the juror named Mrs. Chastain. She walked in and smiled at Bill Powell, and I said, "No, surely not. I mean, no, just incredible." And of course, he was not guilty. There are many side stories, and I can tell you, I could go on forever and ever and ever about them. But some of the latest things we have just heard is the night before this murder, and this is from a witness. Bill Powell met with his parents. He was an adopted child. And his father, his adoptive father, was a chief mechanic at Capital Chevrolet. And supposedly the conversation went from Mrs. Powell to the boy, the son, the murderer, said, you can't let this happen because we've done a lot for you, we've raised you, and he's going to be fired. He's going to not have a job because he's going to be fired by Billy Gurley as soon as he gets in there. And supposedly this really happened. But I don't think that, and they said his father was involved in the murder. I don't believe that's consistent with proof, but I do believe that it happened, and I believe that it made Powell come up with the idea, or if he didn't already have it, I've got to kill him. There's no other way out of this. I mean, we're going to lose a fortune unless I do kill him, and then blame it on somebody else. I can go on and on and on forever. I can tell you why I think we lost the case, or the highlights. Well, Mr. Hooker was appointed as a special prosecutor. Now, mind you, Mr. Hooker represented Capital Chevrolet. And the court granted his motion to be a special DA. And I just, even at that time, thought, that just does not look right. It does not look right that here is a man who and this came out in the trial, obviously, he's representing the victims and the ownership of this company, and it's going to be a lot of money that's going to change hands. It looked like a civil case to me. It had that ring to it. And so I thought that was a mistake. And another thing that happened, which even I, as a young lawyer, noticed, when an objection was made, and so much of what Cecil Branstetter did, Attorney Cecil Branstetter, and I was crazy about him as a person, but his questions were terrible. Any judge would have stopped him from the crazy questions that he was asking. But they would ask questions, especially Cecil, that I knew were objectionable. Everybody in the courtroom knew they were objectionable. And I would think somebody's got to object. And Mr. Hooker would look at Shriver, and Shriver would look at Mr. Hooker, and nobody would object. The court move on. This happened time and time again, and we had to pay the price for it. Also, another thing that I thought was a turning point. The defense decided that, Bill Powell had friends. I mean, he was socially powerful and so forth. He brought, Norman and them did, 4 judges to testify. And you normally don't do this because that opens up wide open cross-examination. But the question is, do you know Bill Powell? Yes, I do. Do you know his reputation for truth and veracity? Yes. Well, what is it? It's good. No questions from the defense. No cross-examination. Now, what do you think the jury's thinking? Here are judges that are saying, hey, this guy wouldn't lie. He's not a liar. And I think that affected them also. I asked Mr. Hooker, Mr. Norman, after so many years had passed, I said, how'd you win that case? And he said, y'all never stood a chance. I said, what do you mean? He said, I keep all these cards, these little cards about jurors, who they're related to, who their uncle is, and everything. And he does. He had this elaborate, and I knew that, this elaborate, it was no computer, but he knew everything about everybody in Nashville, it seemed like. And he said, we had somebody on the jury that I knew that was favorable, that could be favorable to us. He said, I wasn't worried about the case. So I thought we'd win it all along. So that was his idea. But Mr. Hooker, and I, this lasted a year. He lived about a year after this happened. And I met with him many, many times, and he always wanted to go over his final speech. Oh, I didn't tell you about that. You know, you get a final argument in criminal cases. And so we had Tom Shriver to be the opening person to say, here are basically the facts. Well, Tom got a couple of the facts wrong, actually, which didn't help us. But he laid, you know, here's what happened, ladies and gentlemen. No emotion, blah, 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 on and on. And then it was about 4:30 in the afternoon. The defense asked for a timeout to take a break, and it was granted. And came back in. It was time for the defense to put on their argument. Well, Mr. Norman stands up in a very dramatic voice and said, "Charge the jury." Do what? It's never unheard of that you do this. And it's fun to do. I did it one time. I did it one time after that, but you don't do it lightly because you're giving up the argument. I mean, the Powell children were upset about it. I could see they were. You know, what do you mean you're not going to argue? This is what we paid you for. You do it. But he knew, and I asked him this later. I said, why did you do that at that time? He said, I'll tell you why I did it. He said, it was 4:30 in the afternoon. Shriver had made a terrible opening statement. And but then I knew what was going to happen was that Cecil would get up and maybe give a rebuttal or whatever, and then they'd send them to supper, the jury to supper. And they'd come back in after supper on a full belly and be introduced to John Hooker Sr. And he would have persuaded at least one or two of them no matter what, because he was that great of an orator. He was just mesmerizing. So that's another reason that we lost the case. But a lot of quirks, and you know, I could go on for days about this case because it was a fascinating. But I'll tell you one final story. After the trial, I started to say, Mr. Hooker and I'd go meet with him a lot. He really wanted to talk about this trial. It was on his mind. It was heavy on his mind, you know. And he'd give his final argument, which was just incredible, just incredible. I mean, I could almost do it verbatim. I mean, it's just, I've heard it so many times. But, and Mr. Hooker said that he always wanted to die in court, or he wanted to die after one of his Christmas parties. And he meant it. He wanted to go die in the saddle. It was on Christmas Eve of 1970. He had a Christmas party. Probably 250 people there, from the governor. I mean, everybody that was somebody was there at that. And about 12 o'clock it dropped off, and we went into his office, and it was me and the district attorney and Judge White and a couple other people. I said, let's go down to Printer's Alley to the captain's table, which was the greatest place in Nashville at that time. And let's go down there and have a nightcap. And Mr. Hooker said, that's a great idea. And Mrs. Hooker said, no, Shug, they always called each other Shug. No, Shug, I got some food at home, and we need to get on home. It's midnight. So they went on home, and the next morning, I get a call from your brother, and he says, Mr. Hooker's dead. And so I go out there, and on the way out there, I'm thinking, I'll never get that photo that I asked for. And when I got out there, his wife came up to me, and she's crying. She said, you're not going to believe it. Here's your photo. Last thing he said before he died was, get me that photo. He was in bed. And she said, Sugar, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go get Hal Hardin a photograph. He said, well, he wants one, and I promised him one. He got it, and I've got it framed beside my desk. It's a nice compliments and all that. And it gets to the R, it goes like that. Last thing he said, last thing he wrote. I treasure that. Anyway, if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. Yes?
Two things. I want to hear that speech.
How much time you got?
Number two, did they ask for the death penalty, and did that happen back?
Let me tell you, and I'm guilty. I was guilty of this too as assistant DA. If you saw somebody on the jury as a prosecutor, and you thought that they probably would be leaning for the defense, you just had this feeling, and based on their questions, whatever, that they were going to go along with the defense. One of the questions you could ask them was, would you, if you find a man guilty, would you invoke the death penalty? And back then, there were so many things that was the death penalty. Rape or all sorts of things. And of course, these people would always say that you always knew. No, I would not do that based on it. And we would look at the judge and say, Judge, we ask that this juror be excused. Can't give the state a fair trial. And it worked. And Tom Shriver did that for that purpose. We never intended to get the death penalty. We never asked for the death penalty. But he got rid of several jurors that way. It's not an ethical thing to do, but I'm just telling you the way it was. Yeah.
Al, what is your memory now of what kind of job the Metro Police did investigating the crime?
It was terrible. What do you think about the way the Metro Police investigated? I thought it was terrible. The gun was stuck in the mud, 100 yards up from where the shooting happened, stuck in the mud. It was found in the middle of the trial. And that looks so funny, wait a minute, now the state is now, you're bringing in this pistol, and you say you found this, but we had people out there walking, trying to find everything that could possibly be on the side of the road. Well, you just missed it. It's like kind of the Marsha Trimble case. This girl was in plain sight. They didn't get it. They did a terrible job. Oftentimes, I would have to try a murder case, and you have 8 of them set on one day, and you open up the file, and you'd see the autopsy report said he was shot or whatever, and that's all it'd be in. And the police said, signed off, such police, no report whatsoever. And one of us would have to go outside and get on the payphone and call all the cops. You never could get prepared on which case you were going to try. It depended on who pled guilty and so forth. And so it was an archaic system. Short answer is I thought they were terrible. If you'd had the FBI on this, there were so many things. There had to be hair or something in the back seat there where this man jumped in. There was no dust back there. A girlie's wallet containing $200, which is a lot of money back then, is on the seat. No, he didn't take the money, nothing. So I thought it was terrible. Yeah.
A couple of things. One was the death penalty issue there. That's come up again. I know
one of my heroes.
Yeah.
Taught me too.
There's no way a jury is going to convict a rich white man. And I'm just wondering if that's an argument that should be made to end the death penalty. Maybe it's a deterrent to punishment rather than deterrent to crime. The other was this Klaus Lulo, I think his name was, years ago, was prosecuted, I forget what it was, murdering his wife or somebody. And he convinced Alan Dershowitz, when Alan Dershowitz was still thinking,
Right.
to be his, or gave him a bunch of money to represent him. And Dershowitz said he didn't like the fact that they hired the prosecution hired a special prosecutor. And
Yeah.
so again, that issue, I'm just wondering what you think of those two issues.
But the question is, what,
Those two issues, whether a jury, whether death penalty is maybe in some cases, a deterrent to punishment rather than a deterrent to crime, because they're not going to convict a rich white person. And secondly, with the Klaus Bulow,
yeah.
in other words, the whole issue of whether prosecutors should be allowed to, or the prosecutor should be allowed to hire a special.
No, I don't think they should be, and you no longer can do it in Tennessee. That's been outlawed. So it's a good law. We should not have special lawyers. But it really helped out in the country where they didn't have enough manpower oftentimes. And so they would say, well, Lawyer Jones could be a special prosecutor. And they had some good intent behind it, but it just looks bad. And I was always opposed to that. So, well, okay, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
What did you think about Powell saying the man that he identified the man that was the shooter, and that man ended up being in prison at the time of the murder?
Yeah, the guy, he was, a matter of fact, he was in the Peace Corps, not the Peace Corps, the Job Corps out in L.A. and in jail out there, and also been a student out there. So he insisted that this guy was guilty. I mean, he said, yes, he is. Ain't no question about it, But obviously, when we found out that, it couldn't have been the guy. Yeah.
Hal, this is a fascinating story. Recapping a little bit, two people owned Capital Chevrolet. One had, and so there was an agreement that if one of them died, the other one got the dealership, correct? So,
Yeah, they kind of split it, and the bottom line of it is, Powell would have been out if he hadn't done what he did. They're going to give him $100,000 or whatever it was, and so yeah.
So, basically, someone is murdered, this guy gets the dealership, and then what happens later in life? What happened in the next few decades?
They bought out Mrs. Gurley, her interest, and one of them had the franchise and one of them had the dealership, and it was a complicated contract, very elaborate, but they paid her off some amount of money.
This is the widow.
The widow. And that's another interesting thing, after the shooting and everything, Powell didn't go see the widow, which you would think he normally would, say, I'm so sorry, that this happened. Until like a week or so later, and he went out there and said, we talked about, we need to do this deal to get the money and go on, or, whatever we got to do.
But what happened to Powell?
He prospered. He got the murder car and cleaned it up and put it right outside of Billy Gurley's office. Outside of his office. I mean, imagine that. And also, I found this out since the trial. He got the gun back because if you're charged with a crime that involves a gun and you're acquitted, then the property goes back to you. He had the gun framed on his mantle. No, it's just. I mean, how callous can you be?
That's why they called him Boom Boom.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Is he still alive?
No, he's dead.
no deathbed confession or anything like that?
Oh, hell no. Not Bill Powell. I mean, I'd see him at, at Vanderbilt games and all that, he was always loud and boisterous and, yeah. Yes, sir.
Wasn't there a witness that saw Powell get out the car, go to the trunk, and then, did he not testify at the trial?
Yes,
And they didn't believe him?
they didn't believe me.
Was he someone?
Well, let me tell you another backstory about him. He was an African-American guy, and we found out about him also, just, after the indictment. And called him as a witness, and he was really cross-examined hard by Cecil Branstad and so forth. And his boss, the owner of the construction company, now get this, the owner of the construction company was friends with Cecil Branstad, one of the lawyers, and he testified, this guy is lying, there's nothing to it, and so forth and so on. Okay, fast forward. Martha Tate, who wrote this book, about a year ago, she called me and told me this. She's at this funeral, and there's this woman that just keeps waiting around, she noticed, until everybody's gone. And she came up to Martha and said, hey, my father was that guy, and my mother got a divorce after that trial because he had lied. I mean, made up the damn story. And she said, it's been on our mind. And I think she said she started law school as a result of that. It's just such an injustice for the state.
Who
But
was this, the witness?
the witness, the witness was the president of the construction company that was hired this eyewitness that was found. I'll tell you, I believe very strongly that if you'd had two of the good, experienced assistant DAs that we had in that office, this guy would be in the penitentiary today, or be dead there. But I think it was a winnable case. It was a very winnable case. And I'll just say something about jury cases. I believe the jury is right. In the 90 percentile, they're right. If they do something wrong, it's either because of the lawyer's fault or the judge's fault or some strange thing that's happened. But I believe that most juries do the right thing. They try to do the right thing. Most people take it as a very serious thing, and they honor their oath. Now, and after 50-something years, I still see that. Yeah.
How effective was the Judge Cornelius?
Well, he was a rookie judge. He had been down in General Sessions Court, which is the lower court, trespass on the sidewalk or spitting on the sidewalk, jaywalking, all those kind of things. And he had been elevated up to this court, and I didn't think he did a good job either. I mean, I'm not trying to blame everybody else, but I just sensed even back then that he just wasn't a good judge. And you look at some of his rulings, and reading the transcript now, I don't think he was a good judge. Yeah.
Considering how notorious the case was locally, did General Shriver ever consider requesting a change of venue?
No. And I don't think the state can do that hardly. If it's, that the defense can, but that's very rare. I don't even remember ever seeing a prosecutor ask for that.
That was the mother of regularity, apparently.
Yeah,
Like you said.
a lot. Yes, ma'am.
I knew Tommy Shriver socially, but not professionally. But why do you think he made the mistakes in the opening statement? And I know he got a lot of criticism after the trial for not being stronger or doing things, but.
First of all, I like Tom Shriver. I thought he had many, many qualities. He was bright. He was hardworking. He was like all of us. He had flaws, and one of his flaws was when he had these powerful cases, he wanted to be the prosecutor, where instead of you should really as a prosecutor, if you got somebody you think in your office that can do better than you on this particular kind of case, then go with them. And he didn't do that. And I don't know why he made the factual errors. I think he just got carried away in talking and blurted it out, but it cost us. I don't even remember now what factually it was, but it was incorrect. And you don't expect that from the DA. Yes.
You said in the beginning that the town was really divided over whether he was guilty or not. I never talked to anybody that had any doubt. My dad came home from work that day and said, my friend Bill Powell just shot and killed the boss.
Yeah. I think it leaned more that way, but it was divided. Everybody was opinionated. Yeah, I don't know the precise numbers of each one, but the town was divided, and everybody talked about it. And you know, I knew that this was the last hurrah. I mean, I thought this case you'd never be able to put all of these facts together. So I felt so blessed that I had a chance to be involved in it. Even though it was disappointing. Yeah.
Why do you think people still talk about this case? What was it about it that captured everybody's attention and still talk about it today?
Well, you know, it was I don't know, here's Bell Mead, people, all sorts of, you know, some infidelity came out. I mean, a lot of this just had a lot of sex appeal, if you will, in broad sense of the term. It was just, it was like something you'd read in some novel. I mean, like, you know, who did it? You know. Oh, and incidentally, in that book that was a novel, made it. I'm the main character in the book, and and my name is Hallie. I'm an African-American transvestite. But the real reason you don't know it's me is because she was editor-in-chief of the Law Review at Vanderbilt. I never even got close to that. And also, here's how they made the story, changed the story about going to Madison, Wisconsin. She went to Chicago to get the witness, and she didn't like to fly. And so they got her drunk and put her on the plane. And she was arrested because she got up and was doing the moonwalk down the aisle. That's on a Southwest airliner. I mean, it's they can't make it up. No, it's just.
Now, just to be fair, you're not describing Martha Tate. I mean, this is the other.
Oh yeah, it's the other. Yeah, it's the other book. The Trial of the Century, they call it. The Trial of the Century, by Jim Cameron. Yeah.
What's the book where you are Hallie?
I'm sorry, what?
What book is the book you were describing in which you?
It's the last, the Trial of the Century. Oh, that's the last trial. I'm not talking about that one. I'm talking about the novel. There's the novel. It didn't sell very well.
Can you tell us about the woman who wrote this?
Yes, I can. She was on the phone virtually every day. She dug into things. I mean, she lived this. She admits she liked Billy Gurley a whole lot, you know, and still does. I mean, she lives down in Atlanta. She's still getting requests to go to talk to people in Paris, France. She went there, you know, to talk to a book club. This thing is still selling. It's amazing to me how many.
I've heard her talk at Vanderbilt
Yeah.
Bookstore.
Yeah.
She and Billy
Yeah.
together talked, and there was no room for anybody.
No, she got into the nitty gritty of it like nobody had done before. I was amazed. But there's a picture of. We found this later on. There's a picture of me and Martha, you know, walking together. I didn't know she was walking behind me, coming out of the courtroom.
It's been several years since I read the book, but I seem to remember you talked about his motivation may have been to keep his dad's job.
You mean when he first became an employee? I think that Mr. Gurley thought that, you know, he was all kind of an all-American football player, charismatic, handsome,
He's kind of at odds with the son too, right?
yeah, yeah.
Who was the football player? I'm sorry. I'm making-
Bill Powell was a football player.
So he was the charismatic guy.
Yeah, he was. He was popular. And everybody says, well, you know, why isn't he innocent? Because he had a grazed wound on the side of his knee. Well, first of all, I don't know how the shooter could have gotten there to have done that, but that is not unusual. I mean, I remember there was a case I read about down in Daytona Beach, I think it was, where this guy drowned his wife and shot himself, nicked him like 14 times, you know, because you know what's coming. You know that you've got to come up with a defense real quick. And so it's not an unusual thing, and it just didn't make any sense how he could have done it, the guy in the back seat. Well, folks, I've enjoyed being here. I hope I haven't rambled too much. As you can tell, I don't have the prepared notes. There's a